You don't want to avoid the page completely, but when you build that page out, you want to put stuff on there so that that page can cast a very wide net so that you can start to rank for more keywords. And this is how you can kind of get into taking your competition on, not head on, but kind of hitting them where they're not. Something that you want to think about is the strength of your site, how strong your site is. But there's probably a level of keyword that Google will trust you immediately. This is for a site that's completely brand new to a site that has all kinds of things going on. So without any SEO, without any backlinks, without really even doing a lot of on-page, just getting the terms on the page, maybe in your title, you can win that term. So when you post them, you naturally get traffic and naturally move up. And then as you get that natural traffic without any SEO, you can then go after more competitive keywords.
Our guest today, Kyle Roof, is an SEO expert. Kyle is responsible for the development and implementation of all SEO techniques used by the SEO agency High Voltage SEO and the SEO tool PageOptimizer Pro. Kyle is also the co-founder of Internet Marketing Gold, a global community of 3,000 SEO professionals who test and prove cutting-edge SEO techniques. Kyle is also a co-host of the SEO Fight Club, our weekly YouTube show that covers a multitude of SEO topics. In our conversation, we talked about SEO, especially about on-page SEO. We covered how people think Google works versus how it actually works, the basic best practices for giving your content the best chance of ranking quickly, how Kyle won an SEO competition using his secret method, and much, much more.
Welcome to the Ecom X Factor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of Ecom X Factor, Yaron Bin.
Hi Kyle, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Looking forward for this talk. We already talked a bit about Chiang Mai, which is where you live and where I used to live, and I miss that place very much. But now I'm looking forward to diving into the SEO content.
Fair enough. We can talk about Chiang Mai too if you'd like.
So before we get started, can you share a bit about your background and how you dived into SEO and your products that you're offering and everything?
Sure. I'm the lead SEO for High Voltage SEO. We have offices in Phoenix, Berlin, and Melbourne. And out of that agency, we developed PageOptimizer Pro, which is an on-page SEO optimization tool. And basically from the support of that tool and another tool, who's a friend of ours, we created IMG, Internet Marketing Gold, which is a place for courses and training and support for primarily SEO and also digital marketing. So I've been doing the agency since 2013, SEO full-time since 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. I got into SEO testing, and I think I'm most known for creating SEO tests and doing on-page SEO. I do actually hold a patent for conducting tests on Google's algorithm, and I think it's one of the few patents that exist for actually testing the algorithm. I think I'm most famous for Rhinoplasty Plano, which was a SEO competition from 2018, where the competition was to rank for the term rhinoplasty Plano. Rhinoplasty is a nose job, and Plano is right outside of Dallas, Texas. And you had 30 days to do it. A brand new domain, and after that, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted. And I technically took fifth after 30 days, but 2 weeks after the competition ended, I hit page 1. People kind of got excited about that. And then I went to number 1 in organic, number 1 in maps, and people kind of lost their minds. And the reason that they lost their minds is because I built the site in lorem ipsum. It was written in gibberish, but I did the math. I did the math that you needed for the particular terms. Within the lorem ipsum, I copied and pasted the exact keyword, its variations, its contextual terms, and I gave Google the page that it wanted. And it was to show that it's not really good content, but it's actually the math that you give Google's algorithm is what's important. Obviously, you need good content to convert. You want people to like what you're doing. But when it comes to ranking and ranking alone, it's a little bit of a different story. And that really then kind of launched then what we're doing with the testing, because the tests that I do went into PageOptimizer Pro, which went into creating this particular page for this competition. And so we take a very science-based, math-based approach to our SEO. And then that's also what I teach as well with the courses that I have and stuff like that, is how to take an approach where you can, it's not fairy dust, it's not magic, it's not, you can be very systematic with your SEO. Can be a little tedious because math isn't the most fun, but we try to make that as easy as possible with the tools. Kind of taking that approach to SEO is how I've kind of made my name and my way through this thing.
I want to know also about the patent and how you filed it and what does it consist. And on the other hand, I want to know what Google wants. What did you give Google with their lorem ipsum?
Sure. The patent started off as a PR stunt. It was really just to say we had this patent pending. This was in another group that I was working with. We had a patent pending formula. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't think it would go through, to be perfectly honest with you, but it did. And it's basically how to test for a single variable within Google's algorithm, or a search engine's algorithm is the concept, and how to isolate a single variable so that you can see if something is or is not a ranking factor. You know, people talk about how complex Google is, and Google certainly is extremely complex, and I don't know everything about it, but there are elements that you can learn about Google. And you can do that through systematic testing. And that's what the patent kind of covers, is how to set up a test within Google to see if something is or is not a factor within the algorithm. What was kind of fun is with rhinoplasty plano, when Google found out about the site, they actually wrote a new rule within the guidelines. You can't create content that makes no sense to the reader, but contains keywords. And that rule didn't exist before the competition. It came in after the site went public. And then Search Engine Journal did an article about the site about 3 months later, and Google de-indexed my site, which I guess is fair play. But then they also de-indexed 20 of my test sites, which had nothing to do with the competition site, using that same rule. And what was really wonderful about that is it completely validated everything that I was doing. If I was, I think, talking nonsense or got lucky, they would have rolled their eyes and moved on. But the fact that they made a rule that you can't do this, and that they also then went after test sites that have nothing to do with the competition site, tells me that I figured out exactly a way that you can test exactly what's going on within Google's algorithm. It just validated everything. One thing is, like, what's great about SEO is the proof is in the pudding. Like, if you're able to make something to rank, you're showing that you're doing it, if you can do it as a repeatable process. And then if Google can attack you for it, then that's got to be like the 3 for 3 in terms of you doing it right.
Nice. You probably were very excited and happy to see that they de-index your websites.
In the moment, it wasn't very fun. But when I was able to take a deep breath and think about it, then it became a lot more fun or a lot more interesting. It's launched my career. It's made me a lot of money. Cool. Is the bottom line. Kind of Google doing that. Like, I think they were doing it to hurt me, and it turned out they went the other way. You know, it's made me quite successful.
How did you come up with the testing method? I mean, where did you take the idea from? From studies in the academy that you've done, or just came up with it, or like you probably saw like inspiration somewhere? Well, the inspiration that I saw was I needed to learn SEO immediately because I needed to make money to pay my rent. And when you search, like, you know, is this a ranking factor? You'll see 3 yeses, 3 nos, and 3 maybes. And I was like, well, that's a waste of time. Like, that's not a way to learn. And then I was like, oh, you know what they're doing is everybody has their own test site. So then I started creating test sites so that I could play with things. And then I got into, well, how can we eliminate variables? And that's kind of where I then started drilling down, like, how can we create situations where we can eliminate as many variables as possible within a particular experiment. And that's kind of how we got down to getting into, okay, we can see that this one thing is happening. And then the idea is making it repeatable. You know, if we repeat this experiment again and again and again, do we get the exact same outcome? And then we can say with a certain degree of confidence that, yes, this thing is a ranking factor. So it was really necessity. And I also assumed that everybody was doing it. I thought this is how everyone has to do SEO, because everybody can't read this garbage that you see in all these different publications. This is just complete nonsense. Everybody must be doing this. And then I gave a talk on it in 2015 to a very high level group of SEOs. And I thought we were just going to be like collaborating and giving ideas. And I realized, like, oh, nobody's doing this. Like, this isn't very few. I know that people did it before I did my talk in 2015, and they had shown it. I personally hadn't seen any of that before. I've seen some stuff since that's very, very similar. But the concept is there, and the concepts worked then, they work now. Nice. And they continue to work, and which is a nice competitive advantage that, you know, if you take the time to set up sites, you can actually see what's going on with Google. Can you share, like, what is the volume of testing that you do in order to know about one variable? Is it like 20 tests? Like, are you looking for statistical significance, or is it too complex to get statistical significance? No. We hit statistical significance. But when you think about a coin flip with a heads or tails outcome, if something happens 3 times in a row, the chance of that being luck is 16%. But if something happens 4 times in a row, now the chance of that being luck is 6%. And that's just outside of statistical significance. Yeah. And if you have something that happens 5 times, then you're inside. So if you're running tests, and tests are very difficult to run and set up and all that, but if you have something that happens 4 out of 5 times within Google's algorithm, you can feel pretty good about the results that you're getting, that it's not a random occurrence that the coin is rigged, you know, that you are actually seeing something that is significant. But then what's nice from there is that, you know, we do have an agency, we do have clients.
we kind of have, I guess, stages of sites, if you will. So we've got the test sites, and then we have sites that are real sites that we can then take those concepts and put them into play, see if it works. And if it does, then we feel very good about the information that we're giving our clients. Like this is the best guess, that because we've done it here in this test environment, which is very isolated. We've done it on this real site here that we control, and it's still working. And then we can give it to you. We know that when you look at the range of probabilities, this gives us our best opportunity for success. And I think that's really what it comes down to in SEO is giving yourself the range that you have the best opportunity to be successful.
Nice. Secrets or best practices, and make them very tactical and e-commerce related. So what have you seen based on your test, or the people that you serve in your agency? So is there obviously there is specific advice that you can give for e-commerce store owners in regards to SEO, on-page SEO?
For sure. One of the biggest things I come across is giving Google the page that it wants. I'll have somebody in an e-commerce store say, should I optimize a products page or should I optimize like a long form article? And the first thing I ask is, well, what's Google rewarding? Because Google will show you what it likes. One of the key concepts with Google is that the secret is hiding in plain sight. Google shows you the sites that it likes, and it shows you what it wants for that particular keyword. So do the search for your target term, and then you can see, is Google ranking products pages, or is Google ranking long form articles, or something else? Mm-hmm. And then that's the page that you want to create. Every once in a while, you'll see a split. It's some products, some long form. And sometimes Google does change their mind. It doesn't stay static, which is unfortunate. But in a lot of situations within a e-commerce store, you can create a products page and optimize it as a products page. And then you can also create a long form page for that product as well. You can link them to each other. And it gives you an opportunity, depending on whichever way Google likes to go with a particular page, you've got both situations covered. And then if you're creating supporting content, you can link supporting content to one page and supporting content to the other page. And you create a very powerful silo where you're really going after a lot of different keywords and a lot of different concepts that are all very closely related. And they're all interlinking to each other. So if somebody came from the long form, they can get to the product. If somebody came from the product, they can get to the long form to get more information, or to the supporting content to get even farther, more precise information about what they're looking for. So step one on this is give Google the page that it wants. And usually in that situation is then build out the things, especially things that are going to give you the most ROI, is build out. If you're not sure it's possible it could swing one or the other, then do both. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're worried about cannibalization, you can see that within Search Console cannibalization, whereas two pages are fighting each other, but it's very unlikely if you've done one that is a pure product page and one that is a long form article page, they're going to be competing with each other. It'll just be whichever one Google prefers.
Taking your answer and referring to something that you posted in your LinkedIn, I saw that I really liked the case study you did about the masterclass and the shallot articles that they wrote about the shallot onions. So what you said there, that masterclass, they recognized they wanted to do like courses about cooking, and they recognized that people that are looking for shallots, onions are probably looking for recipes, and then it might internally link them to masterclass. So I'm wondering, regarding the silos that you mentioned, how broad should I go? Let's say I'm selling a facial serum. So how broad should I go? Because there are like the very straightforward articles that I can write, but this idea of like writing about the shallot onion is very creative in my opinion. So can you share what you suggest in this regard?
Yeah, you do need to think a little bit outside the box of it. And that kind of gets into another point on not taking your competition head on. People will often ask, like, I'm going up against Amazon. How do I beat Amazon? And the short answer is you don't. Like you're just simply not going to beat Amazon, or like the sites I'm going against all have the domain age of, 50. And it's amazing because the internet isn't even that old. And how do I compete with that site? And you don't. You don't compete with them head on. So you do need to get a bit creative with the approach that you're going. In addition to the shallots example, another example that we had was we were selling ski lift tickets in New Zealand. And one of our best performing pieces of content was, what is the weather like in August in New Zealand? Because who knows? It's on the different side of the planet from people who are doing that search. And is that a time that you ski? I don't even know. I don't even know to this day, to be honest with you. But it was a very well-performing page because even though it said nothing about skiing, nothing about lift tickets, people who were looking for weather in New Zealand at specific times were looking for specific activities. Is that the right time to go for a certain activity? And then we realized that we're getting traffic for people that were looking to ski or to do some sort of activity in that regards. When you're looking at how to get creative. You want to think about what are people doing? What are people doing in those situations? So when they're searching for shallots, what would somebody be doing if they're searching for that? They're looking for a Wikipedia page. That seems unlikely unless you're in 6th grade and you're writing a report about shallots. There's probably something else that you're doing. And a shallot is a very specific type of onion. Okay, somebody with a specific type of onion, what are they doing? So you can kind of get to that point of like what's going on with the user if they were to make that type of search. One of the things though is that Google can kind of guide you to those things. And how you can do that is, let's say you want to do your top level term, and it's something that you're never going to win. You still probably need a page for it. You don't want to avoid the page completely, but when you build that page out, you want to put stuff on there so that page can cast a very wide net so that you can start to rank for more keywords. And this is how you can kind of get into taking your competition on, not head on, but kind of hitting them where they're not. And so when you do a search for a term, scroll to the bottom and you're going to see related searches. Pick the one that you like the most, the one that's going to take the page in the direction that you want to go in, and then click on that one. Now you've got 2 sets of related searches. Find the matches between those 2. And when you find the matches between those 2, those become the different sections of your page. Those would be your subheadings or your H2s on the page. You now know that those things are completely connected to each other. And what you're going to find is those are a lot easier to win than that target term, but they're connected. They're the people that are doing those types of searches. Now to fill out those sections in between, do the clicks one more time. Do those related search clicks and see what Google talks about there. And then that's where you find those things on, what are people doing with shallots? What's the weather like in New Zealand in August? You're 2 steps away from your target search, but it is interconnected. And Google actually shows that to you. Look at the questions on the people that are also asked on that 3rd step. Those are the ones then where you get those real nuggets, because then you find out what questions people are asking about those terms, and you know that they're only 2 hops from your target term, and they're often a lot easier to win, and they often give you a lot of insight at a minimum to what Google thinks, but Google is training itself on how people are doing these searches through them. So you're going to see some insights there as to what people want, and they can find those nuggets where you're winning terms that are significantly easier to win, but get you into the audience that you want to see your product.
For example, for the weather in August in New Zealand, was the search volume high, but the difficulty low?
Nobody was searching for it. It was like weather.com. But I mean, they're not really doing it for that in particular. So when you create so it's like, we can't go against weather. Well, they're not actually optimizing for that term. They're winning it simply because. So if we could hit on the 4 or 5 spot for that term, all of a sudden we start to get a lot of traffic for it.
Nice. Let's say I'm a store owner. I don't have a lot of content writing power. So I need to calculate my resources carefully. So do you think it's like this method, it sounds amazing, but is it like maybe too much investment, or do you think it will be very good ROI pretty fast? I mean, what should I expect?
Well, the nice thing is that you don't need to write huge articles for these types of terms. We're talking 500 to 750 words. They're relatively straightforward. And it's the kind of thing that you could probably get cheaply done, and then you edit for whichever language that you're in, and whichever language you're targeting. So it is to get somebody that might not be a native speaker of that language, have them do it for you, and you're paying a very small amount of money. And really then your time is in the editing is a way to save a lot of money when you're creating content. If you are the one doing it, it's preferably within your natural language. A language that you feel at least confident enough in to do that. Or you can pay somebody else. Like I wouldn't pay the $25 to $30 an hour person to write anything. I would pay somebody that's in the $8 to $10 an hour to create content, and then I'd pay that $25 to $30 an hour kind of person to edit, because they can edit so much more than they can write, and they can edit for natural language. So that's kind of a little tip on how to create content. But something that you want to think about is the strength of your site, how strong your site is. But there's probably a level of keyword that Google will trust you immediately. This is for a site that's completely brand new to a site that has all kinds of things going on. So without any SEO, without any backlinks, without really even doing a lot of on-page, just getting the terms on the page, maybe in your title, and your H1 and maybe one time in the body. So that's your bare bones minimum on page. You can win that term. You've probably done this. You've launched it. You've seen it, and you're on page 2. It's like, you're like, I'm an SEO god, right? And then the thing is, like, you just take a term that's very similar, and you do the exact same thing, and you don't even hit the top 100, and you just feel like you have no idea what you're doing. Well, the difference between those 2 terms is that the first term was probably within your natural tier, where Google is trusting you, and the second one wasn't. And so what you can do is you can find the volume, probably the monthly volume that you can win for your particular niche. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. And that's beyond an hour show, but to find those terms to post it. So when you post them, you naturally get traffic and naturally move up. And then as you get that natural traffic without any SEO, you can then go after more competitive keywords. So getting into the nuggets gets you there. That's usually probably within a range that's probably pretty comfortable for you. But if not, then you kind of want to find out what terms I can win really without any SEO. And then I'd invest my money there, because then you're going to naturally push up. And the thing that's going to do this for you is it's going to decrease volatility. You don't have to worry about Google updates anymore because you're not dependent upon those updates. When Google does an update or something changes, they take away a boost, something that was taking you out of your natural tier. So it's not that you necessarily got a penalty, it's that you just moved down to the spot that you belong. So if you're methodically moving up levels and you're doing it basically without SEO, but more through keyword research and posting things that you're winning with limited SEO, then you decrease volatility and you actually increase the amount of traffic, and that traffic that you increase traffic that you want, because these are usually longer tail phrases that often have a little more intent or a little more meaning to them, or as we talked about, kind of finding those ones that are 3 hops away, and those are real nuggets. Nice. So like those are the ones that that's kind of how I would frame it. Look to find your natural tier, post within that natural tier, and it's a pretty good investment. It's actually a smaller cost investment and even doing a lot of off-page kind of stuff.
With regards to the tools available, so you obviously you have Pop. So how can Pop help me as someone who doesn't know like neither technical SEO, neither off-page SEO or on-page SEO? So how can Pop help?
We try to do it with each iteration of Pop is actually make it easier for somebody that doesn't know SEO to do effective SEO with enterprise level data. And we do it at not enterprise level prices. That's kind of our little tagline pitch. But we have a thing called the content brief. And so when you put in your information, you actually get a brief, and we break the page up into 3 sections: your title, your subheadings, and your main content. And we give you a range of where you need to get your important terms. Your important terms are the things that Google likes. That's your keyword, that's the variations of your keyword, and those are contextual terms. And if you hit within the ranges, we found that your opportunity for success is quite high. And so all you have to know at that point in terms of SEO is what's a title, what are subheadings, and what's paragraph content. And if you can figure those three things out, then you can actually be pretty successful using PageOptimizer Pro. Within our agency, that's where we start. We don't go into advanced strategies immediately. We start with the lowest common denominator. We try to find the way that we can rank quickly and easily, and that's the content brief. And then from there, if we have to get more advanced, then we do. But there's no reason in doing more than you have to, when you can often, it's kind of like an 80-20 rule. You do this much and you get that result. Do that first and see how effective that 80-20 can be before you really have to invest a lot of time and money. And that's really just for a target page. But for the stuff with the content schedule, within Pop, within the content brief, if you scroll down, we give you the related keywords, and we also give you the people also ask. A couple clicks out from there, you can get to those nuggets we were talking about earlier. Nice. So we actually give you those lists there within the content brief.
Cool. And let's say don't want to do this on my own. So you suggest hiring someone, or do you suggest hiring an agency? What are the pros and cons, in your opinion, for a small scale business in doing SEO?
It's never a bad idea to give it a try yourself. One reason that I'm sure I get taken advantage of with mechanics is I know nothing about cars. I know absolutely nothing about a car. Also, they could say your flipper widget is out, and I'll be like, sure. Of course it is.
I hate
I don't know.
The garage.
But what's nice about SEO is that while there are a lot of complexities to it, and there's a lot of advanced concepts, there are some basic concepts that you can kind of get in there and do. And so if you were to use a tool like Pop, and there are several other tools that are similar, you're going to learn a lot about SEO just running a few pages through it and just doing that optimization yourself. And then when you want to go to an agency, you know what they're putting in. You know kind of what they're getting around when they're saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. Now kind of price-wise, is that worth it for them doing it because they're a little bit better at it than I would be? They have more time and resources to devote just to that, and I can put my time and resources into my business. Or you can decide, like, it's not worth that at all where I'm at with my site, and it's actually more cost-effective for me to do it. And with a tool like Pop, you can probably do that yourself, and fairly effectively. So I would try it out first on your own, just so you get a feel for what's there. And if you realize like this isn't for me at all, well, then then you know the value of the work that they might be doing. If you do want to hire an agency, I think something that's also very important is that they're going to show you all their work. And they're going to be able to discuss risk with you, how risk tolerant you are. Some people don't care. Some people, the Google updates are a wild ride and they want that ride. I found that most people don't like that, and that they want strategies that are going to be a little more evergreen. What I would talk about with them is, are you going to be completely transparent? Are you going to show me all your work? Are you going to be able to discuss if there's any dangers if we do anything? Mm-hmm. Because there are times when you're doing something that's completely within Google's guidelines, but Google could change its mind. I mean, that's just how it goes. It's not, you weren't doing anything dirty or nasty. Google just decides not to like it anymore. That happens with updates. So when you talk about risk, where you could be doing something completely within the guidelines, but be able to talk like, hey, this could change. Mm-hmm. And if that changes, what would we do? Or how could we recover? And those are conversations I would have with an agency. If you're looking to hire, are you going to show me all your work? Am I going to see what's going to happen? Are we going to talk about risk? What happens if there's an update? Those are the kind of questions I would have with an agent.
Can you share like an example of something that you've done and Google changed the algorithm and it kind of harmed your results? Something that legit that was within the guidelines?
So there's nothing wrong with advertising your own site. Mm-hmm. And native advertisement looks like it belongs when it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And you see this all the time with like a Facebook ad. It looks like it's a post, but that's an actual ad. Mm-hmm. That's native advertising. And that's what guest posting is. Mm-hmm. Is putting a native ad on somebody else's site. It appears as though they're just deciding to talk about your whatever you're selling, your products or your services, and then they're linking to you. And if you're clear and upfront and you say this is an ad, that's within Google's guidelines. Google might decide though that even though that you have done that correctly and you've acknowledged that this is sponsored and you might have used URL sponsor within the link, Google might decide they still don't like that and they might take that away. And so the boost you're receiving goes away. This happens all the time. Within link building, where a link you were getting that Google was loving, they don't love anymore. And that could be time, that could be you lost the link, that could just be Google has decided they don't like those links any longer. And that's where you can take the hit. If though you're doing something that's a little more content-based, where again, we talk about your natural tier and you're moving up naturally with little SEO, you can still, and you should do all of that other regular SEO on the side. And I would advocate for being within Google's guidelines because I think you can be very effective with it. But if you're doing those things and Google decides to take that away, if you've been moving up your tier naturally, you don't drop from here all the way down to the bottom. The drop is much less significant. One other thing that also happens too, and we can see this in March of this year, there was an update where Google messed up. Like they had a rollout that was not effective and they had to roll it back. And some sites didn't roll back. So when you're doing things more that are content-based, when that happens and you still like, whoa, we took a little hit there, you roll back a lot quicker. Because again, you weren't reliant upon any kind of boost and they might not put something back into the mix. Even though it was completely nonsense, and they might not even have meant to do it. Like in the glitches that they've had in the last couple of rollouts, you just might get caught up in Google's mistake and they don't go back individually and fix it. So I would make sure I've got a strategy going that is less susceptible to even just Google's mistakes.
Quick favor, guys. If you enjoy these shows and have been a listener for quite some time now, we would really appreciate it if you could take the time to give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your preferred podcast app may be. Having lots of ratings and audience feedback makes our show become more visible across multiple platforms. And it also supports our mission of helping as many people as possible to become better marketers and better entrepreneurs. So if you're not driving and it wouldn't be dangerous, pause this thing right now and give us an honest review over your podcast app. And we will love you even more than we already do. Thank you for taking the time and I hope you enjoyed the show. Let's say I have a store. So for example, let's stick to the serum example. So how does my off-page SEO look like if I don't have, it's a faceless brand, like a dropshipping store, isn't famous and there's no presenter. So how would the off-page SEO look like?
Well, that goes to the content that you can create that's shareable. So what can you create quickly that other people would like to share? Because that's essentially what linking is. Somebody's saying like, hey, check this out. Yeah. So what can you create quickly and effectively that somebody might actually reasonably do that? If you're asking people to link to a page where you're selling something, they're going to tell you to pound sand. Why would somebody link to a page where you're profiting off of that link? But if you have something that provides a lot of good value, what is the weather like in New Zealand, for example? Yeah. And that's valuable to their readers. You have a much better chance of getting organic links out of that. You can use social media campaigns. You could use Google Ads for all of those things to create links, to create infographics out of the weather of New Zealand, and then create an ad if you find that people are searching for what's the weather like there at certain times, and now you've got an infographic and people can use that and link to it, you can pick up links, and those are all within a white hat manner. But it's all based on content that you're creating to support that target page. The page that you're ultimately trying to rank. You can create very shareable content, and then that content could be shared organically, or you can push it a little bit through social media or through other ads.
And have you seen, in your opinion, is the proportion of using paid ads, does it do a major lift, or is it like a straight correlation between the paid ads and the leverage in the organic visits?
That is a tough one, isn't it? Like you see people running ads and it seems to help their organic. I know for a fact that it'll help you index a page. If you have a page that is not indexed, meaning Google has not crawled it yet and has not found it yet, Google's number one preferred way of finding a page is through another link. Is going from one page to your page. That's how they prefer to find it rather than submitting to Search Console, say through XML sitemap. They like to find it through a link. I know that they crawl their own ads though, and do them for linking purposes. So if they're crawling them for, indexing purposes, if they're crawling them for indexing purposes, something tells me they might be also part of the link craft. I think there's also an argument to be made for traffic that's coming to your site, and it's a hard one to nail down and a hard one to measure and test. But anecdotally, sites that seem to be getting more traffic seem to get more love, and those sites also usually larger. So sites that have more pages, so you've got a regular content schedule, so you're becoming a much larger site. You're running ads so that people are going to it, even though that's not organic. There's a lot of traffic on the site. Those sites seem to tend to do better overall in the long run with their organic, and a lot of it was based off of just a content schedule and then running paid ads to their site.
Can you share a bit about Google My Business? How can a store can leverage Google My Business? Is it important for me to have a Google My Business listing? And what can I do with this in order to get more traffic?
Well, I think you want to make yourself a real company. I think that's one of the first things, and Google My Business requires verifying an address. I know a lot of people in e-commerce are like, well, my home's my address, so I really don't want to do that. You need to become a real company. Yeah. I mean, that's people figured it out. I would go figure it out. Like there are a lot of companies that have a corporate office. You can have a corporate office that isn't your home address. That's very reasonable and very easy to do. You should have a local number. You should have a local contact number. You should have more than just a contact form on your site. You should have multiple email addresses. Maybe if somebody needs support, what if somebody has a complaint? What if somebody has something else? Like you should have different departments. They all might forward to the same address in the end if you're a solopreneur, but you should have different departments or different things, so that it's showing a level of organization that you're actually making a go at this. When you think about what Google can crawl and what they can find to see if you're a real business, that's what they can do. Google can't walk to your house or to your storefront and see that you're legitimate. Google needs other indicators. So one indicator that you can give them right out of the gate is your Google My Business. And you can say that we are a real company, and then you can use the exact same information on your site. So don't vary the information. Keep it as consistent as possible. People use the term NAP, your name, address, and phone number. And you add in maybe your website, link to your site. You'd want that as consistent as possible in every place you can place it on the web. So that would be, your Google My Business would be the first place to start, Yelp. And then what I would do is I would search for brands that I'm competing against, and the ones that have the knowledge panels. They have a little box on the right-hand side. And then you'll see that Google will list reviews from different sites for your particular niche. What I would do is I would go claim all of the ones that I see within those boxes. You'll probably see 3 to 6 that are consistently showing up. Those are a good idea to go and make sure that you can claim your listing there, and then make sure that you've got consistent information there, because that means Google's clearly crawling them for information within your niche. And so those are things that I would do, because Google's crawling them. So, and that Google's crawling its own stuff because Google loves itself. So it's going to crawl its Google My Business. It's going to get the information from there first, and then it's going to go to those other ones for your niche that it likes, and it's showing you the ones that it likes. And it's going to match that information up. And the more it matches up, the more it realizes that you're a real thing, and that's something that you should do. So when Google does the updates, the medic updates, they like to call them, or the EAT updates. What they're not necessarily moving your site up because you've done it, but they're not moving your site down. It's kind of like ranking because of somebody else's mistakes, where your competitors didn't do these things, so they dropped and you were able to move up as a result. So that's the approach that I would take. I don't know if GMB necessarily is going to get you any more clicks simply by having it.
So you said that the GMB is not necessarily going to help you get clicks, but it's good for authority, I guess?
yeah, at a minimum, it establishes that you're a real thing. And that's definitely the first and foremost reason why I would do it.
This is an interesting question that I'm very curious about your answer. So what are some misconceptions that other experts, they keep on saying, like YouTube gurus and SEO gurus, but you think is completely wrong?
Well, on this topic, people talk about getting writers that have expertise. And I don't think Google is in the business of comparing degrees. Google's not going to say like, somebody that's got a degree from Oxford and somebody that's got a degree from Stanford, which one? You're not going to take the time to compare those degrees. So it's not necessarily that you're an expert in that way. I think it's that there are other signals that they can look at. One would be that you are linking out to real people. So at a minimum, that the person's got a LinkedIn thing in there, and they can actually then see that maybe there are papers that are scholarly that are linkable. But let's say you're Joe on the side, and you've been doing this for 30 years, and you don't have the degree, but you're extremely knowledgeable.
Yeah.
There's no reason that what you're saying isn't also valid. And again, I don't think Google's in the game of figuring out what's more valid, experience or a degree versus, some kid right out of Stanford who cares what he knows. This guy's got 30 years experience. So I don't think that's what it's all about. I think it's discovering or ways for Google to figure out that you're an actual person and that you actually exist and the site actually exists. And there's somebody that's going to take ownership for this information or responsibility. Let's say you follow Joe's advice and you get hurt. Who can you contact? And who can you get help from? So when it comes, that's a misconception that I think a lot of people struggle with, is that you don't need to go out and get a doctor to write your articles. You need to be able to establish that somebody is a real person that's writing that article and that it's a real company behind it. And if you need help, you can contact somebody. Those are the more, I think, important concepts when it comes to EAT or those types of medic issues.
You've shared a few creative ideas in my opinion. So how do you conceptualize like SEO concepts? Do you think about this, or is it more creative process, or is more like number based, or how do you more philosophically, more theoretically, how do you think about this stuff?
Well, I want to get the math right first. Like that has to be your foundation, because if you're not ranking, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how creative. You can quickly outthink yourself and try to get way too creative with what you're doing. And so I think you want to start with the most foundational thing, and that's getting the math right for your primary keyword, deciding this is a primary keyword, this is something we want to rank for, identifying that and getting that math right. And then doing those things correctly, I think, leads you to the creativity. So like if you're thinking like, oh man, I'm not a creative person, I have no original ideas, that's okay. Google will lead you to that creativity. But I think if you need to get the numbers right first. And if you get the numbers right, your on-page is going to do most of your heavy lifting. Your on-page is going to do a lot more than links will do, at least an individual link. And the one thing you control about your site is your site. You control what you're putting on there. And you don't have control over backlinks or how Google interprets them, but you do have control about the words you're putting on a page. And so that's where I put my focus first. I get that math right. I get that page set up correctly. So I've got my sections that are semantically related. And then I start to think about, okay, now that I've got this page, how can we identify what our supporting content would be? And that's where within those thoughts, I think, and that's kind of that structure, which feels rigid, but then we realize that it gets creative at that level, where you can get creative with where you're going. But kind of nailing down that foundation first is, I wouldn't overthink it. Start at the simple level and then get more creative from there.
So when you say I wouldn't overthink it, so how would one plan a strategy, an SEO strategy? How do you think is the best way to start doing this, like SEO? So you mentioned hiring, how you consider hiring. So hiring someone is pretty cheap, and then paying for an editor which has the native language. So this is one aspect, but how would you go about like building the strategy?
Well, you need to figure out where you are first. So the first thing you want to figure out is like, what are the top terms we're going after? And we can decide if we can actually win those or not, but let's identify our top terms, because we need a page for that. One thing that people miss first and foremost is if there's a term that you really need to rank for, you need to have a page for it. If you don't have a page for a term, you're probably not going to win it. When I ask somebody like, what do you want to rank for? And they're like, I want to rank for this term. And they're like, okay, what page are you optimizing for that? And I was like, my site. And it doesn't work that way. Google isn't ranking sites; it's ranking in individual pages. So identify what you're trying to do. Okay, these are our top target terms. We like these 5, for example, and these are our 5 target pages. That's kind of like step 1. of just identifying those types of things. Then you want to benchmark. And a lot of people miss this step, but you need to see how that page is performing. And the KPIs that I think you want to look at are how many keywords is this page ranking for? And you can see this within Search Console. How many impressions is the page getting? How many clicks is the page getting? Those three things are extremely important KPIs because it's going to tell you how the health of that page and what it's doing. And when you look at the keywords that it's ranking for, you can also see, are these the ones that we should be getting? Is this page moving in the right direction? So that if we win, if we do better with these other keywords, are we still getting the right type of traffic? Because sometimes you'll see that you built it up correctly, but Google starts associating it with the wrong sort of thing. And so even though you're crushing it, the traffic you're getting isn't traffic that you want.
Yeah.
On the other hand, what happens quite a lot is that you build a page correctly and you know in that target term, or you barely smell good rankings with it, but with those secondary terms and then all those other terms, you end up with a page that's ranking for hundreds to thousands of keywords and is performing extremely well because you got into a page that has sections that are semantically related. They rank for more keywords and they're going to give you more impressions and more clicks. But you need to know where you were at when you started so that as you do this optimization, as you go through this process, then you can see that growth. And what you should see is that the page starts to rank for more keywords, that the page is getting more impressions, and then even by accident, is you're getting more clicks. Something that you'll notice, though, is when you're looking at these page level stats, is that your overall ranking for the page is going to drop. Your click-through rate for the page is going to drop. And this freaks out a lot of people. And they're like, our average position in Search Console for this page is going down. Our CTR for this page is going down. Those are actually a good sign. It means you're ranking for more keywords, and those more keywords are naturally going to start lower, and they're going to pull down the entire average on your click-through rate and your average position for that page. But it's a healthy page because you're picking up more keywords, you're picking up more impressions, and you're picking up more clicks. And on all of that, when you benchmark and then can measure on what you're doing, none of that really comes down to how you rank for one particular keyword. You can keep an eye on it for vanity's sake, and it's a lot of fun. We all are vain, and it is fun to see a page on page one and feel like you did something. But that really wasn't the ultimate goal. When you're taking this type of approach, your ultimate goal is to build a page that's going to get more traffic, and it's going to get the right kind of traffic. And I think you want to benchmark those KPIs a lot more than looking at any kind of rank tracker for the position of one particular keyword.
In regards to building everything, and do you have any automation tools that you've started using lately? Many people are talking about Conversion AI, which is like an AI writing tool, and I started using Texao, which is kind of like Fandobuster. It's not related to SEO, but it does help with automation. So, what is your take regarding tools, except of POP?
Now, if you're using those types of things, it's going to spit out garbage unless you're really on top of it. I don't know if you're playing with Spinner Chief in 2012, but in my mind, it's basically the same type of content because it's not AI. It's not creating new content. It's not writing it from a space of creativity. It's still scraping from somebody else's site, and it's just doing a slightly better job of reconstructing it so it sounds more like the language you want it to be in.
Yeah.
So it's just more advanced scraping and spinning is what you're playing with. At the end of the day, you still do have to have somebody edit it, but you can take that for the content generation, that initial first step, and then maybe you give it to your first level writer. And now instead of giving them the outline, you've given them the stuff that you've created through that. And then they do an edit on that first. And then they give that to the final person. So maybe it speeds up the process or makes things a little bit easier. You can create more content a little bit faster. But at the end of the day, I'm not overly impressed that these things aren't writing anything new. It's not like anybody sat down and wrote a fresh. They had to go to another source and pull it, and they're doing a great job with that. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's an amazing thing that they can do, but it's not anything brand new. So if you need any content that's actually brand new or might have an original idea, those tools aren't going to create it for you. At least not right now.
This is a common debate, but maybe you've tested it. Did you test anything regarding plagiarism? I don't know even how to pronounce it in English. How do you pronounce it? Plagiarism, yeah. But
duplicate content is really the bigger issue. Taking the same thing. The bar for duplicate content is super low. So you can have content that is extremely duplicate, and you'll get past Google's filter, and the content can rank. I rarely worry about duplicate content until you start seeing pages across the site that it's like 2/3. 70% duplicates, we might have a problem here, guys. But the bar isn't much lower than that. Like, you probably just need to take it down to about 51%, somewhere in there, 55%, and you're probably going to be just fine with the content. That is something that those tools do very well, is that they pass duplicate content checkers. And that's the advancement that I think they've done, is they're spinning it so well that it is passing those types of things. And so it'll pass Google for sure in terms of being unique. But is it good? Not really. So maybe you can fast forward the content creation a bit, but you're not using that to create your content. Not without somebody else really taking a look at it.
For sure. I was hoping this would be better. It does save a lot of time, and it also helps with like writer's block. But you still need to verify and edit and proofread and all the stuff.
For sure. For sure.
What about PR stunts? So you mentioned PR stunts, which you did in order to promote your brand. But do you have any ideas or case studies or examples of PR stunts that you've pulled off for more e-commerce related brands? Is there room for this, for PR stunts that are related to e-commerce?
There's always room for PR stunts.
For sure. But
large companies and small companies all do PR stunts. I don't know if I've got a bag of tricks for those kind of things though, but every once in a while things do pop up that you can do that are humorous. I mean, Wendy's has their viral Twitter that just like roasts people constantly. That's absolutely hilarious. And I can't imagine a brand making that decision. Like, you know what we're going to do today? We're going to start roasting people on Twitter. They're going to do it so well that's actually going to come up. I mean, that's amazing. Brands every once in a while pretend that they're going to change their name or they're going to offer a brand new product line when it's not anything related to what they're doing, and that gets press. People create feuds that aren't real for purposes. Maybe they're like on a more mundane level, astroturfing. So astroturfing is creating a thread in Facebook that isn't real. So somebody asks a question about a particular thing, and then other people start to respond to that. And they respond like, my experience has been this, or I've tried that. And then somebody will pop in, well, what about this one? And then all of a sudden things get very positive about that particular product or service or offering. And then what it is all of those accounts are connected to each other. They're all either fake accounts or they're real accounts, but they're getting paid to say positive things. Those are pretty easy to do. Especially within Facebook, where you post a question within a Facebook group that is related to whatever you're trying to sell. And then you have an army of people that are going to come in and comment about how great that particular thing. Yeah. And they'll do, honest evaluations of like comparison between one product and another. But in the end, your product wins. I don't know if that's the most ethical way to start advertising, but it's certainly something that is very doable and attainable. Astroturfing is something that's very easy to do, and all the big brands do it. And if they deny it, I say they're lying. Yeah.
For sure.
What they say though is like, oh, well, we didn't do that, but we have brand ambassadors. The brand ambassadors know that they need to jump on and say very positive things about the product when they see those opportunities.
Exactly. So, and there are platforms that are like providing this, like micro workers and Mechanical Turk. People do this very often, this kind of stuff. And what about, Reddit? Do you consider Reddit as a valid place to get in traffic, or is it just only junk traffic more very often?
Well, Reddit's the exact place where you can astroturf. That's probably a third of Reddit. Or someone's like, within the SEO space, there's some very popular SEO subreddits. You can get in there, and someone's like, I was really wondering if anybody could do keyword research. And all of a sudden, this random tool get pitched, and like other people will jump on, like, oh, I really like that one, or it's great. Something that's been fun. So I have a Reddit handle, but it's anonymous. And I've seen a few conversations about me on Reddit. I saw this, or I tried that, or I was thinking about this, and it's been extremely tempting to jump into those and join in as like as though it's not me. But I've refrained. But that's been a weird thing when you see somebody talking about like, oh, I saw him say this, or I saw this, that, or I tried this, some kind of thing, and then people doing like a pretty honest discussion about it. It's kind of interesting to watch from the outside. Something I never really conceived would happen, where you'd see a thread about yourself. People, who knows who they are, but I doubt that I know them. And it's like, well, that's interesting. It's an interesting experience to watch people talk about you, because you don't really get that too often in life.
By the way, for me, I saw a few interesting methods in regards to leveraging Quora. Because Quora jumps up very often, it jumps up pretty high in the search engine results, and sometimes you have questions that are not answered well enough. And if you pop a question and then you get upvotes, which you can do ethically or unethically, this can be a great tool for driving traffic to website or store. Do you use this?
I'm sure. I haven't played with it at all, but I know people that are very successful with it. It's it wouldn't surprise me that it's a very successful way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Is there any traffic source that you're using that you think is not being used very often? I mean, I don't know, TikTok, Snapchat, Medium, something like, except of Google and Facebook, generally speaking?
I don't have any secrets there. The biggest thing that I've been working on over the last 7 months is a case study of starting a site from scratch and doing a completely white hat approach in the CBD space. Nice. And we've gone from a site that, has no impressions to a lot of impressions and a fair amount of clicks. And we are building backlinks now, but they're all within white hat techniques. Mm-hmm. We didn't do that until 4 or 5 months in. So the first whole set of it was just posting content. Nice. Posting content every day. Within the natural level, to push up the natural level of the site was the whole concept, to show that this could actually work. And we showed that it worked. But what's pretty cool is the site's not ranking for thousands of keywords, but I think I just saw last count, we have 200 featured snippets. Featured snippets that we had no idea existed until we created the content, and we've got them. And that's bringing in a decent amount of traffic, or at least a decent amount of impressions. So I feel like I don't stress about the latest and greatest way to get traffic or to get some sort of I need some super special secret sauce. Mm-hmm. I think it really comes down to doing really good keyword research and figuring out where your site is, and then posting content at a regular clip within that tier for your site, and you can be extremely successful. Because I think people end up spinning their wheels a lot. Mm-hmm. They try something for a few minutes and they're like, didn't work. And then they move on to the next thing, and then they move on to the next thing, or they just sit there and they actually are just overwhelmed with ideas. Yeah. I could do this, I could do that, I could do that other thing. And they end up doing none of them. Mm-hmm. And you end up with an inaction. So I think, and then what I would do is, let's say I decide I like Quora. Okay. I'm going to go for that. Go for it. Yeah. Really make a plan for it, stick to that plan, and do it. And I do it at least in a 3-month sprint, where I can evaluate something not day to day. Because if you look at something from day to day, you're just going to lose your mind. Yeah, for sure.
Like cryptocurrency.
You will completely lose your mind watching something day to day. But week to week is a little bit better. Month to month is even better. And then 3 months looking at it is the best. Mm-hmm. So if I decide I like that concept with Quora. And I would also say it's not going to take me away from a more core concept of SEO. So you don't want to ditch your core concepts. Those still need to happen. And then when you decide to do something like Quora, that's something additional. That's outside of your core. So at least you've still got the tried and true stuff. You know that it's still working, and you're still going to, at a minimum, you're going to stay flat. But if I do this, I'm probably going to rise just a little bit. And now you're looking for something that's going to give you a real boost. That's going to push you up. And we're going to get traffic from this source. So you got your core going, then I would approach Quora or whatever you want to do. And I'd make sure that I've got a set plan. I've written it down. And it's not just in my head floating somewhere. I've written this down. I put a plan together. I'm going to evaluate after 3 months. And that's how I would approach it there. So you're actually getting something done. And then you're not just flittering around here and there, trying once, it not working, and then letting it go. You need to do a much better approach to it than just that one small little thing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's very hard if you're an entrepreneur. It's very hard to keep focus. And there's always the newest method. Someone is doing YouTube, someone is doing Medium, someone is doing Quora. But at the end of the day, consistency wins. And
have the core. Have something that you're always going to do that is going to work. And maybe if you don't know that, then you need to figure that one out first before you're trying something else. You need to figure out that core thing for you, figure that one out, and then you're building off of it. And then you can try the latest and greatest, then you can give it a go. But make sure you've got that thing that you're consistently doing that is consistently growing your site.
Awesome, Kyle. Thank you so much. So very valuable and a lot of insights. Is there anything that I forgot to ask or anything that you'd like to mention, like a key takeaway? Or
No, I think we hit it all. It's all good.
Awesome, great. So we will share an affiliate link in the show notes for people who want to join the tool, like subscribe to POP. Anything else? Where can people find more about you guys, about your agency? And
so Internet Marketing Gold is the group. There's a free Facebook group you can join. And then within Internet Marketing Gold, we have 27 courses now. 3 of them are mine, my on-page course, Beginning SEO and White Hat SEO. We publish tests there. So I publish 1 to 2 tests a month, and then so do a bunch of other people. And nice. You can kind of see what's going on with Google right now. But that's a monthly subscription at $89 a month, where you can really I don't know. I think if you want to know what's going on with SEO, I think it's a pretty good way to do it. But people can find me there. So you can check out the free group. And then if you like, you can check out the paid group. That's a good spot to find me, is Internet Marketing Gold.
Well, thank you so much, Kyle. Enjoy your time in Chiang Mai. Hopefully see you soon in a few months, and we'll keep in touch.
Sounds good. That'd be great.
Awesome. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Hi guys, this is Yaron again. Just a few more things before you take off. Number 1, if you want to learn more about e-commerce and marketing, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, which is called Ecom X Factor Official. Number 2, check out our Facebook group, which is called Ecom X Factor Marketing and E-commerce Mastermind. This is a great place to ask questions and connect with other business owners. And last but not least, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with your friends and colleagues, plus leave a review at your favorite podcast app.